This is the download from Sounds Profitable, your daily source for the essential news in the business of podcasting. I'm Gavin Gaddis. Here's what you need to know for today, Tuesday, April 22nd. First up, Digiday Plus research branded content rebounds as a top source of publisher revenue. Every Q1, Digiday Plus research surveys publisher professionals to get the lay of the land. This year's survey found publishers' branded content revenue is increasing after a downward trend since 2021. 94% of respondents said in Q1 of this year they get at least a very small portion of their revenue from branded content, ranking second place behind direct sold ads. A big jump compared to Q1 of 2024 when the number was 72%. Podcasting can continue to facilitate that growth with studies like the power of branded podcasts continuing to demonstrate branded podcasting's efficacy. Next up, why is ad creative in decline? This is from Edward Cotton on LinkedIn. A recent survey conducted by Better Brief surveyed over 1,000 people from creative agencies and client marketing departments, focusing on the creative development process. While creative is what makes the advertising world go round, the survey finds there's a lack of pride in the creative work being made. It's going through an average of 5 rounds to get approved, and briefs are often being ignored over personal opinion when evaluating ideas for creative. Only 27% of marketers and 30% of agencies agree with the sentiment, "I am well trained in how to evaluate ideas." The business of podcasting could become one of the better examples of an industry where creative is effective, well-produced, and consistent. Podcast ads rely on authenticity and connection with audiences, if not outright directly read by the person they're tuning in to hear in the first place. And for our final top story, podcast advertising 2024 review and 2025 preview. Magellan AI has a new presentation looking back at last year and looking forward to what's in store for this year. Podcasting's kicked off the year with double-digit growth, with Magellan AI estimating total spending on podcasting increasing 23% year-over-year in January and 25% year-over-year in February. Looking back to 2024, they chart 8.6% of overall podcast episode time was dedicated to ads, a 6.38% increase from 2023. Of the ad spend tracked by Magellan AI, the top 10 advertisers combined spent $369 million on podcasting last year, with Amazon grabbing the top spot at $60.3 million in spend in the U.S. ranker. Which, by the way, if you would like to submit yourself for a future edition of Co-working, check out the website or newsletter edition of today's episode, which includes a link on where to email to do that. Today, I want to highlight Colin Gray of Alitu and the podcast host. Colin's background is in education, with his early podcast production showing the overlap between building a course and building a series. A big challenge he sees the industry currently facing is keeping indie podcasters flowing into podcasting and keeping them around, with a marked increase in attrition during the early stages of production, such as new podcasters burning out under the presumption they need video to make a new show. You can catch all of Colin's questions answered, and he gives some pretty dope answers, by the way, at soundsprofitable.com in the Insight section, where all of the co-working issues live, or with a link provided in the show notes as usual. Now, as for the rest of the news, Podscribe has published their latest podcast and publisher rankings for April 2025, showing strong performances from established shows, as well as notable growth among rising voices. The Podglomerate welcomes Jose Roman as their new lead editor to support their growing production client portfolio. Triton Digital has a new Australia podcast ranker for March of 2025, which shows industry growth, such as a 160% increase in advertising impressions year over year. BBC Studios has announced a new partnership with Audacia, who, starting this month, will represent BBC podcasts in Asian markets. Corsa Digital and Audiohook are hosting Pitch and Pour, the brand voice experience, an event to let your brand speak and sip from the rooftops of New York City. That's May 15th at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. Admission to the event is free and will take place at the Castell Rooftop Lounge in Manhattan. And finally, the 29th annual Webby Award winners are now live, and Pod News has provided a handy-dandy collection of podcast winners, which I have, again, linked in the show notes. Be sure to check out the links to every article mentioned right in your podcast listening app or at soundsprofitable.com, where you can also subscribe to get the newsletter version. The download is written and produced by myself, Brian Barletta, and Tom Webster. No, Pumpkin the cat is not present right now. Sorry. For Sounds Profitable, I'm Gavin Gaddis. Download us again tomorrow.